Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending PPPC's 2012 National Convention, and welcome to the Top 10 Mistakes Promotional Products Distributors Make with Customers and How to Avoid Them with speaker Dave Feldman. This is just a reminder that this session is being recorded and synchronized to speaker materials for future viewing through the PPPC's Live Learning Center. The PPPC Live Learning Center allows you to catch up on sessions you've missed, review key information at your own pace, and helps you to continue your professional development year-round. For more information, visit the PPPC booth. We hope you'll enjoy this learning experience while earning more points towards your certification. At the end of the session, you'll receive an evaluation form. Please complete it and hand it out on your way out. Again, welcome and enjoy the session. So now just to introduce your speaker, Dave Feldman. He's the president of David Feldman and Associates, a sales and marketing consulting firm that's based out of Cary, North Carolina in the United States. He's a popular speaker who has delivered seminars and keynotes at industry events across the United States, Canada, England, Ireland, and Australia. He's also the author of Listen to the Dinosaur, which Selling Power magazine listed as one of its top 10 best books to read in 2010, sorry. Please join me in welcoming Dave Feldman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and good morning. And we're here to talk about mistakes. Anybody ever make any? No. I have. I'll raise my hand to that. I've done a fair amount of research over the years on what happens between distributors and their customers, and I think we've determined that there are constant, similar, often repeated mistakes being made. So the idea for today, our goal for today, is first of all to bring them to your attention. And second of all, to give you some thoughts on how not to, make the same mistake others have made, or if you've made these mistakes before, not to make them more than once. First on the list of the top 10 mistakes that promotional products distributors make with their customers is losing trust. Losing touch and losing trust. I want to ask you a question. What do you think drives the buying decision that your prospects and customers go through? I mean, let's face it, they don't have to buy what they buy from you, right? There are plenty of people in Canada selling the same sort of products. They don't have to buy them from you. Often, they're faced with the decision about buying from you or buying from somebody else, some other distributor. What are the factors that they consider in making their decision? What do you think?
Familiarity.
Familiarity, that's a good place to start.
Are you easy to deal with?
Are you easy to deal with? Also a good one. What else? What else fits into the decision?
Relationship.
The relationship. So that takes us to this question. What is the foundation of the relationship?
Trust.
That's what I think it is. I think it's trust. Now, maybe there's a little hint for you in that the graphic says, bear with me a moment. There we go. The graphic says losing touch, losing trust. I want to tell you a story. This takes me back in my career very close to 35, 36 years. I started my sales career, actually I started my selling career in the restaurant industry. I worked my way through school in kitchens of hotels and restaurants many, many, many years ago. I graduated from the University of New Hampshire in 1973 with a degree in English literature. If any of you have one of those, you know how little it qualifies you for in the real world. But I had some experience in restaurants, so I did that for a few years. And then I got myself a job selling restaurant equipment, which didn't go very well. But then I got myself a job selling printing in business forms with More Business Forms, a great Canadian company. I did pretty well at that. And then I got promoted to a sales management position. And then I got promoted to a marketing staff position. And when I became a marketing staffer, all of a sudden, instead of selling stuff, I was exploring relationships and exploring the decision-making factors. And at one point, I was tasked with a market research project to identify the key triggers, the key buying factors. So we got a bunch of printing buyers into a room. There were 7 of them. And this is printing-specific research, but I'm pretty sure you're going to agree that it's the same sort of factors that people consider, whether it's print or promotional products or signage or bagels or donuts or whatever it may be. So we get these people into the room, and I ask them, what do you care about? What are the things that you most care about? What are the factors that you consider in making your buying decision? I bet nobody would be surprised to hear that the first 3 words I heard from them were quality, service, price. The unholy trinity, right, that we hear so much of in sales. All right, quality, service, and price. Here's what I was thinking. I was thinking, I'm not getting paid to accept such shallow answers from these people. So I pushed them a little harder. What exactly do you mean by quality? What exactly do you mean by service? What exactly do you mean by price? We get some dialogue going. And we're talking for 10 or 12 or 14 or 15 minutes, and all of a sudden, one of these people raised his hand and he said, I think we're really only talking around the most important issue here. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we're talking about all these manifestations of quality and service. We're talking about price. But it occurs to me that the most important factor really is whether I trust this salesperson when this salesperson is telling me all of these wonderful things. Now, let me ask you this question. You're all salespeople, right? What is it that salespeople do? And I'm talking about absolutely fundamentally, at the most fundamental level. What do you do? What do salespeople do?
Sell.
You sell, but what does that really mean?
Talk more and listen less.
You talk more and listen less. And that's another one of those mistakes that salespeople make. But really, you hit the nail almost on the head, because what I think salespeople mostly do is talk to people. That's what you do, fundamentally, every day. If I'm your boss, if I'm the sales manager, I want you out there talking to people who buy what you sell. I want you talking to lots of people. So that's what salespeople do. Salespeople talk to people. So now let's think about these conversations that you're having with people. And you'll hear from me today that I'm a very, very, very strong believer in consultative selling, which means more listening, less talking. It means that most of the talking you do, especially in the early stages, is asking questions to get people to tell you stuff. But even believing in consultative selling, even believing in an interrogatory process, it always comes to the point where you got to tell these people why you think they should buy from you. Now, I'm looking for one word that really describes that sort of the conversation. I'll give you a hint. It starts with P. What one word do you think I'm looking for?
Persuade.
Persuade. That's a great word, but it's not the word I'm looking for. P-R.
Product?
Product? That's a big part of what we're doing, selling the product, but that's not the word I'm looking for. Professional is another really good word.
Not the right one.
It's not the right one. I'll give you some more letters. P-R-O-M.
Promise.
Promise, that's the word. Think about this. You make promises. Salespeople make promises. That's what salespeople do. I promise you'll be satisfied with the quality. I promise that the actual thing is going to look as good as the sample that I've showed you. I promise you'll be happy with my personal service. I promise that the damn things will be here on time for your event. I promise that I know what I'm doing. I promise that I only work with vendors, with suppliers who know what they're doing. I promise this, I promise that, I promise the other thing. That's what salespeople do. You make promises. So here's the fundamental bottom line for you. If you can get people to believe your promises, they'll think seriously about maybe buying from you. But if you can't do that, they won't. They really won't. Do you agree? Does anybody question whether it really is trust, the fundamental level here? Because after all, too, isn't it true that everything you sell is custom manufactured? I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe it's manufactured and then imprinted, but it doesn't exist in the form that the customer is buying it until they place the order. It's critically important that you build a level of trust so that they believe your promises. Now, no question, no argument, because I have data to back this up. Over the years, we took the factors that came out of the discussion with the 7 buyers so many years ago, and I turned them into sort of a survey form. You're seeing it on the screen. Over the years, I've asked more than 10,000 people who buy printing, signage, promotional products, to look at this list and rate the factors according to the importance in their personal buying decision. Number 1, by a very wide margin, has been trust and confidence in the salesperson. In fact, over the years, I've surveyed more than 10,000 people. Over the years, 74.1% of all the people that I've surveyed have said, the most important factor for me is that one right there. They looked at the sheet, they saw that this is one of the factors that we wanted to survey, and they said, yep, this is the one that's most important to me. Next, superior quality, consistently superior quality. Next, meeting delivery commitments exactly. Next, resolving problems promptly. I want to stop here for a moment because if you saw the raw data, there'd be no question in your minds, I think, that trust and confidence in the salesperson is head and shoulders above any of the other factors. But when you get to these 3, the scores, the ratings were so close together that I think we'd be wise to say that they tied for second. All right? And then we got another group, willing to work with me, communicates honestly. Sales rep is knowledgeable. Sales rep understands our business. Sales rep brings new ideas. Sales rep calls in person. This bunch here more or less tied for third. A couple things that I think are interesting here. First of all, look at how many times the words sales rep or salesperson come up in the top 10 factors in most buyers' buying decision. And I think that tells you how incredibly important you are. The salesperson is in the process. So now we got this whole internet thing. Do you all feel threatened by online suppliers, by online catalogs? Not yours, but somebody can go Google imprinted pens and find 6.5 million places where they can buy them. They can buy promotional products. People can buy promotional products without ever seeing a human being, right? But I think that this research reinforces the importance of you in the selling process. Actually, let me back up a second and tell you a little story. Tara, in introducing me, mentioned that I'd written a book called Listen to the Dinosaur. Selling Power magazine loved that book. They, in fact, invited me to a conference they held last year on the future of selling. I did my presentation, and I was sitting in the audience for some of the other presentations, and I listened as a guy actually got up on the stage and said, selling is dead. Sales is dead. Salespeople are no longer required. And I'm thinking, who the hell invited this guy to this particular, conference? His point was that most products, many services, you can go online, you can get all of the information that you could get from a salesperson. You can buy at your own pace, following your own schedule, your own agenda. No salespeople need be involved. And I'm thinking that there are, without question, products and services that can be bought that way. But I don't think our products and services can be bought that way. Because you get back down to the bottom of the top 10. Sales rep brings new ideas. How important is that to the way that you sell? In my experience, one of the downsides to learning this business is that there's so much. There's so much in terms of products. And in every different product category, there's so much in terms of options, in terms of models, sizes, different looks, different ways to do things. And I think that the world is full of people who know that they want something with their logo on it to help them sell more, to help an event be successful, whatever it is that they're trying to do. But beyond that, the expertise that you bring to the party, the right tool for the job, is incredibly important. Now, there's always going to be people who will go with the lowest price, who care less about expertise, who only care about, can I get it for 39 cents? Can I get it for 38 cents? Would you sell it to me for 37 cents? There's always going to be people like that. And another of the things that I hope will jump out at you from this list is price didn't even make the top 10. There were 2 representations of price on the survey, lowest price and competitive price. neither of them finished in the top 10 factors. I'll talk more about that later on. We're going to talk specifically about price issues because one of the top 10 mistakes that distributors make is competing on price. But right now I want to plant the idea that there's a lot more to it than who's got the lowest price. And the definition of a lot more has a lot to do with your expertise. So, losing trust, since it's so critically important, would be a really bad thing, right? How do you lose trust? Well, deliver bad quality. That'll do it for you. Miss a delivery. That'll do it for you too. Not return phone calls, stuff like that, that will do it for you. And that actually takes us into another whole element of this problem. It turns out that in addition to the dangers of losing their trust, you can lose their trust and run into all kinds of other dangers if you lose touch with them. Here's something that I want you to understand, and I'd like you to consider this as absolutely fundamental sales knowledge, all right? It is never the buyer's responsibility to communicate with the seller. It is always the seller's responsibility to communicate with the buyer. Now, that means a couple of things. And one of the things that it means is, have you ever noticed that when you're telling them about a product or about a service or about something or other that they don't always understand what you're talking about? It's your responsibility to make sure that they understand. It's not their responsibility to understand what you're saying. It's yours to communicate with them. And it's also not their responsibility to call you on a regular basis to check in. It's your responsibility to stay in touch with them. The Printing Industries Association down in the United States has done a lot of research on buyer activities, buyer philosophies. Specifically, they've done some research on why people change suppliers. My research is what drives the buying decision. This organization has done research on why customers change suppliers. Here's what they've learned. On any given year, they've learned that 10% of all the people who change suppliers, and again, they're talking about printing, but I think it holds true for pretty much anything that we might be selling. 10% say they change suppliers because of quality problems. Another 10% say they change suppliers because of service problems. 15% say they change suppliers because of they found quote-unquote better pricing someplace else. 5% say they change for a variety of miscellaneous reasons, including, believe it or not, my mom got a job selling printing, so I'm going to buy all my printing from her. All the rest, 60%. 60% of all the people in these surveys say they changed suppliers because the people that they were buying from lost touch, because they started feeling like they weren't valued as customers. Look, if you just wait for them to call you, maybe they will, maybe they won't. If they do, that's probably a good thing. If they don't, that's probably a really bad thing, right? So here is my recommendation for you in terms of strategy, in terms of how do you avoid this particular mistake. Make a list of all of your customers, probably from the top down, the one who gives you the most business, all the way down to the one who buys one thing every 5 years. Make a list and then go down that list and assign an interval to each one of those customers. And by that I mean some number of weeks that you will simply never let go by without either you hearing from them or them hearing from you. And if the interval is 2 weeks and that long goes by and you haven't heard from them, that means you've got to reach out and touch them, a call, an email, a visit. 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, I don't know specifically what the interval should be, and it has something to do with how much business they give you, how many dollars of sales, how frequently they order. But maybe think in these terms. You want to set an interval that is short enough that there cannot be a situation where you deliver something, they're not satisfied with it, they place the next order with somebody else and maybe the next order after that, and start getting into a buying habit with somebody else. You want to make sure that you are reaching out and touching them before that happens. Now, what are you going to talk about? I don't know. There may need to be some creativity involved in this discussion. But I would suggest this. Let's say that you've got a customer that you have on a 4-week cycle, all right, a 4-week interval. You don't ever want to let any more than 4 weeks go by without you hearing from them. Otherwise, they're going to hear from you. Somebody who buys from you that frequently, who does enough business with you that you would put them on a 4-week cycle, the chances are pretty good that you're going to hear from them on a fairly regular basis anyway, right? Or you're going to be talking to them during the regular flow of commerce. With somebody who's on a 4-week cycle, which would mean a minimum of 13 touches every year, I'd probably be surprised if you had to come up with more than 3, 4, maybe 5 reasons to call them outside of the normal flow. All right, so let's think of what those reasons could be. At least once every year, you can call people up and do a temperature check on the relationship. Is everything okay? I just want to make sure that there's no, lingering problems, that we fixed everything that might have been broken, anything that you need me to do. At least once every year, you can call and talk about plans for the future year. Sir, a question?
You trade a personal touch, keeping in touch. If it's the frequency's 12, say, and you trade off an email blast to them that appears to be to them for a personal touch or not?
I think you cannot. The question was, can you trade off an email blast was the term that I heard you use.
It could be a blast or it could be a personal email.
All right, now, a personal email works. That's okay. A personal email for a specific purpose works for me. But please don't think that's enough to send out 12 email blasts every year, because you can never be sure that they actually see them and register them, right? I think that to protect the relationship, which was what we're talking about here, we want to escalate it to a personal contact, at least once within that interval. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't send an email that says, hey, Fred, I was thinking about you yesterday when I saw, this thing on the television. And that's the sort of email that sort of begs a reply. And if you get a reply to that, you've communicated. I'm all for using all of the media available to us, which means email, telephone, personal face-to-face stuff. But I would caution you against too much email, right? And I usually keep track. How long has it been since I actually spoke to this person on the telephone? How long has it been since I actually got face-to-face with person? And if it starts stretching out, I would say this maybe. If you've got somebody on a 4-week cycle, you want to see them physically at least once every 16 weeks. All right? Doesn't have to be every week or every 4 weeks. Please do me this favor, though. In making these interval calls, please don't ever call me up on the phone and say, hey, Dave, we haven't seen you for a while. We haven't heard from you for a while. Or maybe let me express that differently. I'll express it the way I might hear that. Hey, Dave, you jerk. You haven't called me recently. I suspect you've been consorting with my competitors. Don't be calling me up and saying that. Don't be calling me up and even subtly suggesting that. That's the sort of thing that might annoy me. And that can contribute to losing trust in addition to losing the touch. Fair enough?
Yeah.
All right. Number 2 on the list, unpleasant surprises. How many of you like surprises? We all like surprises, pleasant surprises. How many of us like unpleasant surprises? 0, right? None of us do. So what sort of unpleasant surprise might I be talking to in the context of this business? One of the most common is when you commit to a delivery by a specific day, a specific time, and then you find out a couple of days before that maybe it isn't going to happen. Have you ever been in a situation where you committed to a delivery based on the best knowledge at the time, but the proof was delayed a little bit, and then they didn't return the proof to you on a timely basis? Forget about manufacturing issues and manufacturing problems. There's all kinds of reasons that a delivery might be delayed. And isn't it true that we often know about that? We don't always know about this early, but we often do, right? Well, here's my suggestion. If a problem even begins to rear its ugly head when we're talking about a commitment that you've made to one of your customers, let them know, talk to them, get in touch with them early, as soon as you know that there's a problem. Because you're in much better shape if you call them up on the phone and you go out there and say, hey, listen, I see something that might turn into a problem that could threaten the delivery date. I wanted to ask you if there's any, what's flexibility in your need. Now, this ties in with, I think this is sort of a trust and confidence issue too. Have you ever noticed that they lie to you about when they actually need stuff? Right? They really need it on Saturday. They tell you they need it on Thursday. Why is that? Because they don't trust you. Or maybe it's just because they don't want to trust the whole process, right? So they build a little fluff into the schedule that they give you, and you report that schedule to your suppliers, as you should. But then maybe the supplier has a problem, and maybe you're in a situation where you've got to go back to the customer and say, do you have any flexibility? And sometimes you find out, oh yeah, a couple of days, if you get it to me by Monday, anything, that's cool, that'll be fine. It would be great if you could always trust everything that they tell you. But you can't. All right? That maybe means that, that you have some flexibility, that you'll live through some of these situations that would otherwise have been an unhappy, unpleasant surprise. I want to tell you something else too. When the worst thing that you could do is to drop the problem in their laps when it's too late to do anything about it, right? I mean, if you know early and you're talking about it early, there may be options. Maybe an option for a partial delivery, right, will be all they need for a particular event. There may be options if you're talking about it early, but the worst thing in the world is to dump the problem in somebody's lap when it's too late to do anything about it. And I want to tell you this about myself, and I'm not sure this is something that I should be bragging about, but I tend to be vengeful. If you cause problems for me, if you cause pain for me, I'm going to cause pain for you. I'm going to make it my business to cause pain for you. And it's the sort of thing that even if it was a little problem, my tendency is I'm going to punish you for that. And that ties directly into number 3 on the list, which is unresolved problems. Because the thing of it is, I know that I'm not perfect. I know that probably none of you are perfect. I know that mistakes are going to happen. Would you agree, by the way, with the statement that every order that you place, every order that you send to one of your suppliers is an accident looking for a place to happen? Would you agree that Murphy's Law runs wild in our business, really in any manufacturing business? There's a lot that can go wrong, right? I think most of us, all of us, know that we can't expect perfection all of the time. All I know is this: if you mess me up, I expect you to fix it. And I expect you to fix it quickly. That's what I expect. And if you mess me up and you tell me you're going to fix it and then you don't, the problem goes unresolved for a while, then I really get into the mood where I really want to cause pain. I really want to hurt you. I wonder if you've ever had this situation too. Little problem, medium-sized problem, maybe even a big problem, but if you get at it quickly and you show your customer that you understand that you created a problem, it is your intention to fix it, have you noticed that, okay, fix it. It's not that big a deal, get it fixed and it won't permanently hurt our relationship? It's been my experience that it takes less to solve a problem early in its life than it does to solve a problem later in its life. Because I think the longer you go with an unresolved problem, the more everybody gets like me and they really want to hurt you. Are you the same as me in any way? I'm not the only one, right? No? All right, that makes me feel a little bit better about myself. Sir?
I think resolving that problem brings right back to number 1, where that helps increase your trust level.
This is the sort of thing, anybody can do it when it's easy. Not everybody can do it when it's hard. And if you think about it, when it's hard, when you have problems that come up between you and your customers, it absolutely is an opportunity to show them that they can trust you. You made the right decision in the first place. Yes, this didn't go as smoothly as we would hope, but you made the right decision, and I will prove that to you by doing the right thing and resolving this problem promptly. Good stuff. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about another mistake, about operating on too narrow a bandwidth. And to get us sort of into this part of the discussion, I want to ask you to indulge me for just a moment. I want to ask you to close your eyes and visualize your best customer, or your favorite customer, because it'll work either way. Visualize your best customer, your favorite customer, standing on a pedestal. And now open up your eyes and tell me, who's your best customer? Do you mind telling me who's your best customer?
You'll ask someone else, please.
Ask somebody else, sir. Do you mind?
Jeff.
Jeff is your best customer. All right, I'm angry with you because this is usually an opportunity for me to get a cheap laugh. Because what usually happens is the first person I ask identifies a company, right? They might say Bell Canada. And other people in the room might say, oh yeah, big company, I'd like to have them as my customer. But I say, no, you're wrong. And then I look at somebody else, trying to get somebody else to answer the question. The second person usually says a hospital or a manufacturing company or a big ad agency, maybe because they know that there's something going on here, or maybe because they don't want to identify their best customer to maybe a competitor in the room. Anyways, I say, no, you're wrong. And then I go looking around for somebody else to make eye contact, and then what usually happens is somebody says, dude, we know this is a trick question, get to the point. The point is, none of us, none of you will ever prosper taking good care of a company. It isn't the companies who are your customers. It's Jeff. It's the individuals who trust you enough to give you at least some of their promotional products business, right? I want you to understand that it is the individual, not the customer. And I hope that too opens up the understanding that you can have more than one customer at any given company. How many of you have multiple contacts right now? Okay. It's dangerous to only have one contact at any given company that you're doing business with. It's a good idea to expand your base of contact. And I'm not simply talking about all of the people who place orders for promotional products. I'm talking about broadening the base of contact with each one of those. How many of your contacts have secretary, assistant, somebody who's working for them? Good idea to have a friendly relationship with that individual. How many of your customers report to somebody else? Also, a good idea to have a contact at the next level up. I have a story for you. I mentioned that my first selling job in graphic arts was with More Business Forums. And I had a situation where my number 3 customer, my actual customer, got recruited away. And he went to work for a new company somewhere in California someplace. They brought in this new fella who had his own contacts for business forums and printing. And these people quickly went from being my number 3 customer to like, I'm not getting any business here. And it was even worse than that because I couldn't even get this guy to agree to meet with me. I'd call on the telephone. He'd say, look, I have my own suppliers. I have relationships. I'm going to continue to deal with people that I'm comfortable with. Fortunately for me, I had at least a name, conversation, relationship with the fellow that this guy worked for, the director of operations for this company. And after about 3 weeks of not getting anywhere, not even getting an appointment, not even getting returned phone calls, I called him up, the director of operations, and I said, hey, I have a question I'd like to ask you. Would you have some time for me next time I'm in your building? He said, sure, when do you expect to be here? I said, well, actually, tomorrow. Would you have some time for me late morning tomorrow? I had no plans to be there the next day, but this was important, so I made plans to be there the next day. He seemed willing to talk to me. So I went into his office, and I said something like, I said, the most important thing for me right now is that you won't perceive me as being a crybaby, what I came here to talk about. But the thing of it is, the question I wanted to ask you is, were you aware that I haven't gotten an order from you guys for almost 4 weeks now since Thomas, moved on? He said, no, I wasn't aware of that. And I said, truthfully, it's even worse because the new fella, Philip, he won't even meet with me. He's told me he has his own suppliers that he doesn't even feel he needs to meet with me. So the director of operations thought about this for just a moment, and then he got up and he said, come with me. If you could picture this. He gets up, he walks out of his office and he walks down the hall, and then he goes down the stairs, and then he comes back down the hall because this fellow, Philip, his office was right underneath his office. And if you could picture this, this guy's about 6'7" or 8 inches tall. He's a very tall guy. And as he was walking, I think he was getting agitated because he's walking faster and faster, and I'm like, trying to keep up with him from behind. He gets to the door, and he stops, and he waits, And he, as I get to him, he takes my back, my shoulder, and sort of pushes me into the room, and he comes in behind me. So Philip, the purchasing guy, he's on the telephone. He looks up. He sees his boss there with some guy. He's never met me, right? He doesn't know who I am. He sees his boss there with some guy, does this, you know, to his boss phone, one moment. And when he's done with the phone, he hangs up the phone, and he looks up, and he smiles like, you know, what can I do for you fellas today? And the director of operations says, Philip, this is Dave Feldman. As far as I'm concerned, he's our forms guy. Do you have any questions? And then he turned around and walked out. Now, picture that for a moment. Pretty cool, huh? Now, you may be thinking that Philip probably isn't going to like me very much. But then the question is, do I care? Do I care if the guy likes me? Truthfully, no, I don't care if the guy likes me. What I care about is getting the orders that I had been getting, that I had earned from you know, the relationship with the previous guy, my company's quality and service and all of that stuff, which, by the way, were all part of feeding my family. It was fairly important stuff. I didn't care if the guy liked me. I figured, okay, given some time, that maybe I can build a relationship with this guy. All right, we got to the point where we were civil with each other. But again, I don't care. Are any of you in this to make friends? Or are you in this to make money? If I give you a choice, you can only have one of the two. Then you're in it for the money, right? Okay. It is dangerous if you only got one point of contact. You are far better off if you broaden that base of contact. You at least give yourself some options, right? All right. Next on the list. Bear with me for a moment. Every current customer provides you with 3 distinct levels of value. First is the value of what they're buying from you now. Second is the value of what they could be buying from you. Third is the value of influence. Oh, I guess I understand now why I have this graphic here. It moved from the last time I put on this presentation. I'm a little surprised by that. But here's the issue. Part of what you want to do is broaden the base of contact with each individual that you're selling to now. But another part of what you want to do is make sure that you're talking with everybody who buys promotional products in these companies. All right, let's go back to the first level of value, what they're buying from you now. What's important about the first level of value is that you protect it. How do you do that? Quality, service, staying in touch. The second level of value, the value of what they could be buying from you. What's important about the second level of value is that you maximize it. So here's a question for you. If I ask your best customer, if I ask Jeff to define your product line for me, how good a job do you think he could do of listing everything that he could be, should be buying from you? Do you think he's as familiar with your product line as you are? Do any of you think your best customers are? If you do, I'm pretty sure that you might be kidding yourself, because they have other things that they think about, right? They have other things on their minds. It is a good idea to educate them about the breadth of your product line. But it's not a good idea to ask them what other kind of promotional products do you buy. Do you see how that might be leaving it up to them to define the product line? So, all right, how many different kinds of promotional products are there? Lots. How many different categories, though, of promotional products are there? What are some of the categories?
Apparel.
Apparel absolutely is a category. And what else?
Drinkware,
Drinkware is a category. What else?
writing instruments.
Writing instruments. Awards are a category. Oh, wait a minute. Awards. Are awards promotional products, or are they trophies? Do any of you know, do you have in your town, do you have a trophy store? A little trophy shop? Guy who engraves trophies, stuff like that? We know that trophies, that awards are promotional products. The more important question is, does the customer know? And if they don't know, they might think not to go to you for a trophy. By the way, if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I'm from the States. I live in North Carolina, of all places. We have a professional hockey team in North Carolina. A lot of people in North Carolina don't know that, but we have the Hurricanes. And my wife is not a hockey fan. But she has a friend who's a hockey fan who had tickets, 4 tickets for the game the night before Thanksgiving. It was Hurricanes and Canadiens. And the usual people that he goes to the games with had gone to visit their families or something. So he offered us the tickets. Do we want to come along? So my wife and my daughter and I went to a hockey game. My wife's first time at a hockey game. I don't think she understood what she was watching, but she seemed to have a little fun. So anyways, she came with me on this trip and insisted that we go to the Hall of Fame and insisted that I take her picture with the Stanley Cup. I'm not quite sure why. But I have that in my camera now, a picture of my wife with the Stanley Cup. Anyways, back to the issue at hand. Awards, what other categories? What other categories of promotional products?
Desktop items.
Desktop items. Here's the point that I want to get to, all right? You shouldn't go to your customers and say, what other kinds of promotional products do you buy? What other kinds of promotional products might you be interested in? What you should say is, you've bought a lot of drinkware from me in the past. You've bought some awards from me in the past, some desktop sort of items. You've never bought any apparel from me in the past, though. You've never brought any logoed, embroidered, or screen printed apparel. Is there any call for that, any need for that in your business? All right, what might the answers be? One possibility is no, we've never brought embroidered apparel. We never want to buy embroidered apparel. We'd rather die before buying embroidered apparel. All right, no opportunity for that product category there for you, but at least you know that, right, for sure. Another possibility might be, I didn't know you could do that. I used to work for a guy, a sales manager, who used to say that those words, I didn't know you could do that. He used to say that's the worst thing that you could ever hear from one of your customers. And while I know what he was talking about lost opportunity. While I understand that, I still think he had it backwards, he had it wrong. I think those words, I didn't know you could do that, are the best things that you could hear from one of your customers, provided that you make it happen soon by getting out there and educating them, as opposed to not ever saying anything and maybe having it come up in conversation 2 years from now. All right? You maximize the second level of value by talking to your customers. That takes us to the third level of value, the value of influence. And here we're talking about testimonials and referrals. Again, this is an area where many salespeople do it wrong. They go to their customer and they say, is there anybody else here in this company who buys promotional products? That's a bad question for 2 reasons. First reason is, again, you're asking that person to define your product line. And the second reason is that the bigger the company, the less chance there is that any left hand is going to know what any right hand is doing. Let's think about this for a moment. Your best customer. What is your best customer's title? What function in the business does your best customer work in? I mean, I would guess it might be marketing, or it might be human resources, or it might be purchasing, or it might be an office manager, it might be the president or owner of a company. The point is this: within any company, different functions within the company have their own requirements for promotional items, for promotional products. So I would say this: if you're doing a lot of work with the marketing people at a big company, but you've never done anything with the human resources people, the question you want to ask is not who else buys promotional products. The question is who's in charge of human resources, right? Identifying a function and then chasing that down. How many of you regularly profit from referrals? Some do. Most of you don't seem to. Let's get the idea of referrals off of the back burner, if that's where it's been, and onto your front burner, because referrals are good. What a referral does is give you a running start at building the relationship, right? At building some trust. All right, so here's a question for you. Is there anything that is better than a referral? There is. What would it be?
Well, a direct contact if they called you. If the referral or the company that you're getting the referral to
Oh, if somebody calls you because they've been referred to you, word of mouth, that sort of thing, yes, that's a good thing, no question about it. But what I was really getting at is the thing that's better than a referral is an introduction, right? If I'm asking somebody who's in charge of human resources and I'm given the name, my next question is going to be, would it be possible, would it be convenient for you to walk me over there and introduce me? Think about this. In selling, cold is always bad. Warm is always better, right? So anything that you can do to warm up your first actual contact with any individual is a good thing. If they can't walk you over and introduce you, maybe they could make a phone call, fire off an email, something to prepare this person that you're going to be calling on for your call. All right. Number 5 on the list, falling behind their technology. I had a specific situation 6 or 7 years ago, this came up, that prompted me to put this issue on the list. And it was a fellow who called me up and he said, I need you to help me talk my best customer out of online ordering. They want me to build a website for them, an online store for them. And I don't want to do that because I don't really understand it. But it's going to cost me money, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to take a lot of work. I really don't want to do that. What they're doing now, calling, faxing in orders, my attitude is it ain't broke. Why do I have to fix it? And my answer was, it is broke, right? Because they want to do something differently. Maybe the good news in this situation is you probably don't have to be out there on the cutting, bleeding edge of technology. But you got to be out there at least as far as your customers want you or need you to be, right? If they're committed to something like this, online stores, online ordering, then you need to be able to make it happen for them, because if you can't or you won't, what are they going to do? They're probably going to go looking elsewhere. Next on the list, mishandling money matters. Do any of you have customers who don't pay you as quickly as you would like? All right. You're entitled to collect the money. You need to collect the money. But this can be a very touchy subject for many people. So let's think now about the customers who pay you slowly. Do they pay you slowly because they're jerks? Or do they pay you slowly because they have embarrassing cash flow issues of their own? If it were up to you, paying your own bills, would you like to pay all of your bills on time? I think most of us would, but not all of us can, right? This is an area where it's possible to hurt their feelings. It's possible to damage the relationship. I have a story to illustrate this point, too. I mentioned that I got promoted by Moore into a divisional marketing staff position. Before that, I'd been a territory sales rep and a sales manager. But when I was a territory sales rep, I was in New England, and my territory included New Hampshire and Maine. It's funny. Many Americans think that everybody in the Northeast, many people in the United States think that the Northeast is New York. You know, they think everybody up there is those crazy New York sort of high-speed, type A attitude people. And the truth of the matter is that New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine are really more southern in the way that they live and operate. I mean, I live in North Carolina now. It's the South. People are really laid back. People up north, right? People up here tend to be fairly laid, maybe not downtown Toronto, but people tend to be fairly laid back. Anyways, I had my worst customer in terms of paying on time was in New Hampshire. And they used to get these regular phone calls from the women in the office in New Jersey. That's really what this story is all about. Would any of you recognize a New Jersey accent? You ever watch The Sopranos, stuff like that? There is an accent and an attitude in most of New Jersey, and it's really not all that pleasant. I mean, I lived there for a while, too. I can tell you that from experience. So here's the situation. I've got my laid-back customers, my embarrassed laid-back customers in New Hampshire, getting these nasty phone calls from these nasty women in New Jersey with these nasty accents and these nasty attitudes. My relationship with that customer was contentious all the time. And then it came to pass that a guy from Alabama got promoted by his company to the home office in New York. And he and his wife moved up from Alabama, and they got themselves an apartment in northern New Jersey. And she went looking for a job and got a job with my division in the credit and collection department. And she ended up handling my territory. And then, instead of getting these nasty phone calls from the Jersey women, all of a sudden my customer up in New Hampshire was getting these phone calls that started out with this lovely southern accent. I want to make sure that we are not the cause of the problem. Was there anything wrong with the product? Was there anything wrong with the invoice? I want to make sure that we're not holding things up here. And then she would say, okay, now, I'm in a situation where my boss wants to know, he wants to know from me when we can get some money from you. What can I tell him? All of a sudden, the money started flowing faster, right? All of a sudden, my relationship with that customer improved. Look, you're entitled to collect the money. You have to collect the money. The sale is not complete until you get paid for it. But there's probably a right way and a wrong way to do this, as there are most things. How many of you work for big companies that have staff, accounting-like department staff, making those phone calls? I don't know about you, but I've learned from my own experience that I want to make the phone calls. I want to be the one who collects the money. Yes, the accounting department is ultimately responsible for it, but I don't really want to take the chance that somebody with an attitude and without an investment in the relationship is going to be making those calls. How many of you like making those calls? Do you like making the collection calls?
Well, I get my money.
You get your money?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't like making the calls. I never have, but I'd rather me do it than let somebody else do it if we're talking about my customers. All right, next on our list.
Can we go back to the 5 for a second?
Yes.
Falling behind the technology. You didn't mention social media. I had that come up the other day. Met a new person, and she says, well, are you on Twitter? Are you on Facebook? Well, I'll look you up there. I says, well, I'm there, but I said, it's just a presence. I says, I'm really not actively pursuing that in technology, but I know it's important. But I do have a website. So
all right.
Anyway, I guess going back to falling behind in technology, how important is this social movement in regards to things like Twitter and that?
Let me answer the question this way. The question is how important is all of this social media networking stuff? Social media networking, right? That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a networking tool. I have always maintained that the most important thing about networking, the most important part of networking is the working part. Whether we're talking about social media, Twitter, Facebook, all of that stuff, or LaTip, or the Chamber of Commerce, or BNI, or any other sort of face-to-face networking opportunity, it works if you work at it. And it doesn't work if you don't. All right, Twitter, you do not have to be on Twitter. Facebook, you do not have to be on Facebook. Website, you do not have to have a website. You simply do not. The more willing you are to go out into the marketplace and meet with people face-to-face, the less you need any of that stuff. All right? And if you think about it, what you do on Twitter and Facebook and what you do with your website is really more about advertising than it is about networking. Okay? You can take it to another level, certainly, and turn it into networking tools. But fundamentally, what you're doing by having a website, by feeding stuff out on Twitter, by posting stuff to a Facebook page, is advertising. All right. What's great about Twitter, Facebook, interactive websites is that you can create the dialogue. They can respond back to you, and then you to them, and then back to you. But here's the thing. One of the concepts I teach when I teach networking, when I teach seminars on social media, the two potentials are projecting and receiving. You can either be a projector on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, or you can be a receiver. When you're a projector, you're putting out news, content, stuff like that. There's definitely a place in your overall marketing plan, I think, for putting helpful content out there, case studies out there, stories of how you worked with a client on the promotional products for a certain event and how those promotional products made the event a huge success. But for the life of me, I don't know why anybody would be interested in, the day-to-day doings of a promotional product salesperson in 140 characters or less. Yeah, there's some opportunity to put news about your company out there, to put content out there. But I think there's far more potential for you in being a receiver, in following people on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn that you are interested in. All right, trust and confidence is the single most important factor in the buying decision. But wouldn't you agree that you often get your foot in the door to build that relationship because you identify some element of common ground between you and the person that you're trying to sell to? Find them on Facebook. See what they're into. You see what kind of things they're talking about, what kind of things that they're doing. And here's some important advice. What you're looking for is not the broadest element of common ground that you share, but the most eclectic element of common ground. Think about it this way. If you're a salesperson, a hockey fan, you're selling to people who are hockey fans, you spend time talking to them about hockey and it's part of the relationship, you may never be more than one of a lot of salespeople that person talks about hockey with. But what if you're the one individual who learned that he has a daughter in ballet, and that he's become captivated recently by this whole ballet thing, that they're athletes? Maybe you know something about ballet, and you can be the one salesperson who brings that element of common ground to the table. And think about this. Maybe you know something about ballet. Maybe you don't. If it's a big enough prospect, an important enough customer, I might make it my business to learn something about something that they are interested in to create that element of common ground. Is that a satisfactory answer? And there's one more part to it too. How many of you are really on Facebook? You're already not, right? So how big a factor is Facebook in your buying decisions for anything? And you're still in the majority. It is the minority of people, mostly young people, mostly the generation Y, the millennials, who are affected by the viral element, who look to all of this stuff to decide where they're going for dinner, where they're going to, or what clothes they should buy, stuff like that. Most of the buying decisions in our marketplace, I think, are still made by people who have not yet fully embraced those media. Fair enough? I guess I would say this. If you're young, those of you who are young, this needs to be part of your business as it grows. Those of you who are old, you have the choice of learning something about it and incorporating it into the business or not. If you choose or not, you run headlong into another fundamental issue of selling. You can't sell to everybody. If you're not on Twitter, you won't ever sell to the people who need you to be on Twitter. But you could never sell to everybody. And there's another element that goes sort of hand in hand with this. You can't sell to everybody, but how many of you think you're in any danger of running out of people to maybe sell to? It's a big market, right? As long as both statements are true, you can't sell to everybody, but you're not going to run out of people to sell to, then you don't have to worry about either of them. All right. Now moving on to chasing jobs versus building relationships. A story. I have a client, a young salesperson in California. I was serving as her coach, which meant that I was talking with her on the telephone pretty much every week, working with her to develop good habits, good strategy. And right from the start of our relationship, she was telling me about this project that she had quoted with a guy. She's a printing salesperson, and we were talking about a pocket folder, a die-cut folder with 4 nested inserts in it. You know the sort of thing that I mean? Perfect sort of project for her particular printing company, but she had quoted it with the purchasing manager, and then apparently marketing put the project on hold. So apparently every week she would call this guy up and say, so what's new with the die cut folder? And he would say, marketing has put it on hold, I don't know anything about it. Anyway, as it happened, I went out there on an on-site visit, and I spent half of the day out making calls with this young salesperson. And one of the appointments that she set up was with this particular purchasing manager. We go in, we get the pleasantries out of the way, and she says, so where are we at with the pocket folder? And he said, like I've been telling you, he said with a note of, something in his voice, marketing put that on hold, I don't know what they're doing. So I jumped into the conversation and I said, hey, tell me something. Since you've been talking about this project, how many other orders have you placed with your printing suppliers? And he said, oh, I don't know, 8, 10, I buy a lot of printing. And I looked over at the salesperson and I said, how many of those did you know about? How many of those did you compete for? And the answer was none, because she'd been chasing a job, right? Chasing a project rather than working to build a relationship. At some point, she probably should have said, okay, the die cut folder, the pocket folder, it's either going to happen or it's not going to happen. What else are you working on? But she didn't do that. She continued to chase this job. And truthfully, she turned herself into sort of a pest was what she did. Actually, when I tell that part of the story, I've been asked before, if she turned herself into a pest, how'd she get the appointment? I have a real hard time getting appointments with people. How did this person get an appointment when she's been badgering this guy all this time? The answer is 3 words that you could use to describe her were dead, gorgeous, and drop. Not necessarily in that order, which was never an asset that I had when I was selling for a living. Anyways, it's a big mistake to chase an order. It's a great strategy to work to build a relationship. Now, how do you know how you're doing in terms of building a relationship? Here's a tool I've built that I want to share for you. And it's based with the idea that the distance between a raw suspect, and a raw suspect just means somebody that you think might be worth calling on, and an actual customer, first order received, is 100 units. I tend to think of this as 100 feet. It can be 100 meters, it could be 100 kilometers, it could be 100 whatever you want it to be. But the idea here is that each 10-foot increment has a definition attached to it. For example, a suspect added through market intelligence is a 10. Market intelligence means you know something about their promotional products needs. If you added somebody to your list from a referral, that would be represented by 20, because you're a little bit further along. 30 indicates that pre-approach research has been done. And by that I mean you've at least identified the individual that you have to sell to. 40 means that you have sent out an introductory letter or letters or emails. And I'm going to talk a little bit further, a little bit later, about sort of a process approach to selling that I believe in. But 50 means we've held a meeting. We had a first meeting and it went well. 60 means met with them again. It was successful. 70 means, all right, I'm continuing with my follow-up plan here. This person is definitely receptive. I'm really starting to feel pretty good about this. I'm starting to feel like I got a chance of actually getting some business here. 80 indicates they've made their decision. They're going to buy from me. I don't have an order yet, but I'm going to have one within 90 days. 90 feet, I'm going to have an order within 30 days. And 100 feet, they've arrived. They're a customer now. With my coaching clients, I use a pretty simple spreadsheet like this one to track this on a week-to-week basis. If you look at the first column, this was the first week that we tracked the process. So everybody got a number which represented where the salesperson thought he or she was in the relationship at that particular time. And then, every day the way I teach this, each salesperson spends 5-10 minutes at the end of the day with this list, going down the list, and the question is pretty simple. Any contact with this person today? No, leave it blank. Any contact with this person today? No, leave it blank. Down here, all right, this one we had some contact with, talked a little bit on the telephone. Nothing really happened, but I feel like I moved the ball forward another step, so I'm going to call this a 51. So see, what we've got here is when there was contact that week, that day, that week, there's a number. If there was no contact, no number. So what we've got is a snapshot of 2 things. Number one, how long it's been since there's been any contact with this individual? which might help to keep some contacts from falling through the cracks. And number two, what sort of progress you think you're making. It's been my experience that if your pipeline lives in your head or in a bunch of file folders or even in ACT or Goldmine or Salesforce.com, if it's not in one place where you can see it, where you have visibility into it, then you're never going to be fully functional. You're never going to be fully aware of how you're doing, and maybe how much more prospecting you need to be doing or how much more contact you need to be making. This is a strategy, this is a tool, which makes it relatively easy for you to track your progress. Now, next on the list of the top 10 mistakes that salespeople make, that promotional products distributors make, is competing on price. Can you win an order competing on price? Well, yeah, you can. Lower your price low enough, you can get the order. The question is, can you make a really, really good living? And the answer is, you can make a living. With enough volume, you could probably make a really good living. But isn't it true that we all want to sell at higher prices rather than lower prices? Selling at higher prices is a good thing. Selling at lower prices is not. It is a mistake to compete on price. Do any of you have a competitor whose only semblance of a marketing plan seems to be ridiculously low prices? It's their whole deal. Really, really, really low prices. Make it cheap and people will buy from them. Do you like that competitor? Do you respect that competitor? The competitor does some business, but the competitor maybe isn't really making a real living at this. I want you to be the people who sell on value, not the people who sell on price. And I suspect that, since you're here, you want to be the people who sell on value and maximize your income as opposed to giving it away. All right, so what this means now is I need to teach you something about negotiating. When your opponent, the person you're talking to, the person you're trying to sell to, raises a price objection, anytime somebody says there's a problem with your price, I can get it cheaper elsewhere, all that really means is that you are now going to have to negotiate. And when a negotiation begins, there are actually three things that are up for negotiation. And those three things are value, cost, and price. And interestingly, this is exactly the order in which I think you should approach any negotiation that you find yourself in. Plan A should always be to attempt to negotiate value. If it doesn't work, Plan B is to attempt to negotiate cost. Plan C, if that doesn't work, could involve negotiating the price, but let's not go there immediately. Let's talk about this. Negotiating value is all about telling them why they should buy from you, even if your price is higher. All right, why is that? Why should I buy from you? Let's say that we're talking about a leather case. Maybe there's going to be 24 of them. First sales meeting, a national sales kickoff meeting, and you're asking me for, let's make it $200 each. And I got a guy who'll sell it to me for $170 each. First of all, would you say that your price is competitive in that scenario? 200, 170, 50, 15% price difference, $30 difference? Would you say that it's competitive? You're shaking your head no?
I don't think.
Yeah?
It's getting to be a stretch.
It's getting to be, well, that's what I was hoping for, was it somewhere near the borderline. All right? So let's make it not a $30 difference per piece. Let's make it a $15 difference per piece. Anyways, it's a competitive situation, but you want to get more for yours than the other guy is going to get for his, which is interesting because they might be manufactured by the same company. Why should I pay more to buy it from you? Not an easy question, is it? What do you think? What would you say if this was a real-life selling situation? Sir?
Well, if I buy from somebody and pay his price, I might look at it, he helped me the most in in the process. In other words, understanding the sale, I was making my decision. That's how I might come about agreeing to a guy's price.
So you need to make the case that there's more value to this than just the product. And you need to make the case that a big part of the value here is the knowledge that I shared with you in order to pick this thing out of the various alternatives in the first place. This is important. You got to be willing to place value on your knowledge, on your experience, on what you bring to the party. And you can't be shy about telling people, look, there's value here. I want to be paid for what I bring to the party. The question is everybody going to buy that line of reasoning? And the answer is no. But if the question is, are some people going to buy that line of reasoning? And the answer is yes, which is always why you try this first. But actually, there's more to the issues of negotiating value. And this takes us all the way to your first conversations with potential customers. I've said already that I believe that most salespeople talk too much. I think I said that the best selling is an interrogatory process. It's not a declaratory process. What sort of questions should you be asking in the process of getting to know a customer, in the process of getting the specs on any individual project? Sir?
I generally ask what's important to them, what's important in their decision-making process.
Yeah, what's important in your process?
And also, are they the ultimate decision maker?
All right, now we're talking about two different things here. But I will say this, it's important to know whether they're the ultimate decision maker or not. Think about this for a moment, though. Strategy A, what's important to you in making your decision? Strategy B, what's the worst case scenario on this project? What's the thing that could cause you the most pain, the most anxiety in dealing with this project? Do you see that there's a difference between those two strategies? If you ask the question, what's important to you, they might say price. They might say quality, right? They might say service, they might, whatever they might say. But if you ask them what they're frightened of, if you bring risk into the picture, I think then maybe you position yourself to negotiate value a little bit differently later on. Because if somebody says to me, well, all right, but I can get it for $30 cheaper, I want to be able to say, yes, but you told me about this situation, about this fear. I paid attention when you told me that, and the price I gave you is not just for the bag, right? The price includes all of the quality control. It includes, the knowledge to make sure that the problem that you told me you're afraid of isn't going to come up and bite you on the nose. I've had salespeople tell me many times, you should pay more with me because you'll get better quality, or you'll get better service, or better this, better that, better the other thing. My question is always, though, how do you know I need better quality? How do you know I need better service? How do you know that's an issue for me? Is it true that there are people who buy junk with their logo on it, and they don't care about anything else other than how cheap it was? Right? Because it doesn't need to fulfill an expensive purpose in their business. Giveaway writing instruments. Right? I mean, I think in that particular category, isn't cheap more important than anything else to many people? By the way, don't ever use the word cheap. Let your competitors use the word cheap. Let your customers and prospects use the word cheap. We don't want to be the ones who use the word cheap. What's a better word? What are better terms?
Less expensive.
Less expensive, more cost effective, all way better than saying cheap, because cheap implies something beyond the price. It also implies the quality. All right, here's the good news about attempting to negotiate value, attempting to tell people why you think they should buy from you anyway. If you embrace this strategy, you're going to find that there's only 3 ways in which they can respond. You tell somebody why you think you're worth more money, there's only 3 ways that they can respond. One possibility, and this has happened to me many times in my own selling career, is when they think about what you say and they say, ooh, I never thought about that. You're right. I never thought about the risk I might be taking buying from the guys with the low prices because maybe they don't pay as much attention to quality control, right? Maybe they're not the ones who bring me the proof and show me all of the issues that I need to be careful of and watching out for. Sometimes you tell them why you think they should buy from you anyway, and they agree, and that's a victory for you, correct? Second possibility. Have you ever been in a negotiation where you stuck with your price, you defended your price, and then the person that you were negotiating with said something like, okay, it was worth a try? Have you ever had that happen? You all know, by the way, that they go to buyer's school. I mean, you're sort of here at sales school listening to me, right? They go to buyer's school. You know what they teach you at buyer's school? They teach you that you can almost always intimidate a salesperson into lowering the price. All you usually got to do is complain about the price, threaten to not buy whatever it is he or she is trying to sell you at whatever price he or she is trying to sell it to you at. Sometimes the price complaint is just a negotiating ploy, and all you got to do to deflect that is to tell them why you think you're worth more money. Of course, it doesn't always work like that. Truthfully, sometimes the answer is, well, that's all interesting, but your price is still too high. Okay, I'm not afraid of that situation because now I can go on to plan B. Plan B is to negotiate cost. And negotiating cost is all about the application of product knowledge. And there are two kinds of product knowledge that are important to you. The first is technical product knowledge. And technical product knowledge is all about all the different products that are available, what sizes, what colors, what options, things like that. And then the other kind of product knowledge is applications product knowledge. Applications product knowledge is all about how the product will be used by the customer in their business. And this is the element where they tell you what sort of challenges they have. They tell you what sort of a program they're doing, a new product introduction, a fundraising event, whatever it may be. They give you some idea of what they're trying to accomplish, and you help them to pick the best promotional product for that particular application. Now, here's another consideration that often comes up here. Sometimes a price objection is not a price objection, it's a cost objection, or rather a budget objection. Are you all in the habit of asking early in the process what the budget is? I mean, I think you need to be. I know that not everybody wants to tell you what the budget is, because many people's fear is, well, if they tell you you've got $1,000, they've got $1,000, you'll make it cost $1,000. But why do you need to know the budget? It's really pretty simple. It's because there's so much variation in the product, right? There's 20-cent pens, 40-cent pens, and $12 pens. You need to know the budget so you can help guide them to the right product. If they ask you why you need to know, that's the answer. That's the answer. And it's been my experience that an awful lot of these situations come about because the salesperson wasn't diligent enough, wasn't assertive enough in identifying the budget issues. So now we come to the point where the price is too high, and it's not the price is too high, I've got 10 quotes on this item and yours is the highest. It's the price is too high, I've budgeted $1,000 and you're asking me for $1,500. Question, if you know that it's a budget issue, can you suggest a lower priced alternative? Probably. A cost negotiation is a win-win scenario in most cases because their price comes down because the cost came down. Not because you lowered your price and gave away profit margin, but because you ended up selling them a less expensive product, which would still do the job for them. There will be many opportunities for you negotiating cost. Remember though, we don't even go there unless negotiating value didn't work. What if negotiating cost doesn't work? What if it's an apples to apples situation and there's no possibility of change? All right, now we come to plan C, where the only way you're maybe going to get the order is to negotiate the price. What I'm talking about here is lowering the price, discounting the price, with no corresponding reduction in cost, which means that you're not going to make as much money on the order. Should you never do this? Of course, there are times when negotiating price is a good idea. Things are slow. Try to get something in, get some work in. A big potential customer where your challenge is to get your foot in the door. I have no problem with using an aggressive price as a strategic tool to win the business. But folks, let's not be all about price, all right? Let's let lowering the price be the last part of the negotiation process, not the first part. And by the way, let's try and incorporate this into your strategy too. Try not to ever lower the price unless you get something in return. And I'm not talking about just getting the order. I'm talking about getting some other concession in return for giving up something in the price. I have a story that I may get to, depending on how much time we have. Right now, though, I want to caution you against putting too many eggs in too few baskets. Number 9 on my list. How many of you want to make more money? Everybody. How many of you don't want to make less money? Through customer attrition? Yeah, everybody. How many of you are doing enough prospecting? Not everybody. All right? If you're not doing enough prospecting, you're putting far too many eggs in far too few baskets. So, let's consider this. There are 4 categories of people on the buying side of your sales equation. I call them suspects, prospects, customers, and maximized customers. The way this progression works, they're suspects when you think they might be prospects. They're only prospects when you know for sure that they qualify. I'll tell you what that means in just a moment. They're only customers when they're actually buying from you. I'll tell you why that's an important distinction in just a moment. They become maximized customers when you're getting the maximum share of their business, and that's the name of the game, right? Getting as much business as you can from each individual customer. All right, back one step. I don't want you to use the word customer unless you're talking about somebody who is already buying from you. Why is that? Because as we decided earlier, your customers buy from you because they trust you. That's the single most important factor in most people's buying decision. What that means is the reason that people aren't buying from you yet, the people that you've been calling on that aren't buying from you yet, the reason they're not buying from you yet is because they don't trust you yet. And that's not an indictment of you. That doesn't say you're not trustworthy. What it says is they don't know yet that they can trust you to keep your promises. What I'm hoping is that that little word trick, that little semantic trick will keep you focused on job 1, which is building trust. Not getting them to like you, building trust. Not overwhelming them with a variety of different products. Building trust, that's what it's about. All right, now back one more step. They're only prospects when you know for sure that they are prospects. In order to be considered a fully qualified prospect, whoever we're talking about has to pass 3 tests. Test number 1. They buy exactly what you're trying to sell. Promotional products that fit your experience, that you have good suppliers for, stuff that you know about. Test number 2, they buy enough of it to make their pursuit worthwhile. Is anybody spending more time than they should on minnows as opposed to be out there looking for more? Yeah. Test number 3, ultimately this is the most important one. They have to show some real interest in buying from you. Anybody got a quote-unquote prospect that you've been calling on for 2 years and they never return your phone call? That's not a prospect. Right? A suspect, certainly. Maybe you want to continue to try and build some recognition and build a relationship there. But if you think about the strength of your pipeline, that person's really not representing any great strength in your pipeline. It's important to know that you've got people that are somewhere in the process of thinking about maybe buying from you. All right, so your prospecting challenges are to identify suspect companies, companies that look like they might be worth calling on because you think they buy a lot of what you sell. The next challenge is to identify decision makers, the person who actually does make the buying decision. Your next challenge is to connect with the decision makers, thereby securing an appointment. Let me suggest this to you, and we have limited time to talk about overall strategy, selling strategy today, but I want to suggest this. Cold is bad in selling. So how about a process that starts with the identification of a suspect company, and then the identification of the decision maker, and then the next step is to send out an email. Maybe a letter would work, but in modern world, emails probably. How about a short little email that says, I'm interested in you because I'm told you're the person who buys the promotional products for your company, right? And then continues to say, I think you might be interested in me because I specialize in those promotional products, and I have a wealth of experience. And then the third thing I want to communicate is, with that in mind, I'm going to call you on the telephone and ask you to set aside some time to meet with me. Please be expecting my call. The point I'm hoping to get across is that you do this in stages. It's a process. It's first I do this, then I do this, then I do this. First I identify companies that look interesting. Then I identify the decision maker. Then I send the email, which positions me to call up on the phone and say, hey, this is Dave Feldman from Dave's Promotional Products. I wrote to you yesterday. I promised I was going to call to see if we could set up an appointment. How does your schedule look for a little later on this week? Do you see how we're breaking the overall challenge of introducing yourself, following up, into multiple steps, rather than trying to make one home run sort of cold call? I like the idea that you break making the sale down into its correct number of parts. And you address each of those parts in sequence. And you think about, okay, what's the obstacle? Well, one of the obstacles to getting people to meet with you is that you can't get them on the telephone to tell them all about why they should meet with you. All right, maybe an email that primes the pump for that, that says, I want to talk to you, so I'm going to call to ask for an appointment. Then all you got to do is call to ask for an appointment. You don't have to call and introduce yourself and tell them all about your company. You've done that in the email. Now you call to see if you can set up the appointment. There's plenty of obstacles for you, but I hope to make the point that if you think about the obstacles and build yourself a strategy, you probably have better success. And it's very dangerous to put too many of your eggs in too many baskets. Would you agree with this statement? Selling is a numbers game? It is. I hope you agree. The more people you talk to, the more suspects that you identify and give them an opportunity to think about maybe buying from you, the more likely it is that some of them will. It's a simple numbers game. All right, now to the last element on the list. And I want to make this point too. This is not number 10 on a list of the 10 most important factors in the buying decision because it's the 10th most important. It's number 10 because it's last, and because I want this to have impact on you when you leave the room. One of the most dangerous things anybody in sales can do is to assume anything. Are you familiar with the idea that to assume makes an ass out of you and me? Have you ever seen the word broken down that way? Just because they ordered one quantity the last time doesn't mean they're going to order the same quantity this time. Just because the colors were A and B last time doesn't mean that they're going to be the same colors this time. Just because you haven't heard anything bad from a customer, because they haven't called you up to say we have a problem with this order, doesn't mean that they love you as much as you hope they do, think they do, hope they do, and maybe need them to. If there are questions, you need to get to the bottom of those questions. Here's sort of a closing thought for you. In my experience, there's two things that really separate the great salespeople from the not so great salespeople in this industry and in many others. And one of them is simply that the great salespeople seem to master little things that make big differences. And I hope during the course of this conversation I've introduced a couple of those little things to you. But maybe even more importantly than that, the great salespeople, they ask provocative questions. If there's something that they want to know, they ask. If there's something that they need to know, they ask. They don't assume. And knowledge is power in this situation as in so many others. So, number 10 on the list, please don't assume anything. All right. We started a little late. I had to rush through a little bit. I'm not going to tell you the story about price negotiation, but I am going to repeat the idea that it's a successful negotiation of price when you get something else in return other than just getting the order, when you get some commitment from them, which shows them that it's sort of a two-way street. I'll work with you if you work with me. I also, in my closing, want to mention I've actually written 2 books. One of them is Listen to the Dinosaur. That's a general book about selling. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and I have a website for that book as well. But I also wrote a book even before that. It's called Sell More Printing, and Forms and Signs and Promotional Products. I really believe that the sale, printing, signs, promotional products, it's fundamentally the same. Trust issues, the same sort of prospecting and follow-up issues, the same sort of good questioning issues. I want to mention that if you like the way I think, there's a whole lot more of it in my book, and I brought some to sell anybody who wants them. We charge $65 US on my website. The special price here is 35 Canadian dollars if you're interested. I could even take credit cards. If you're not interested, I'll cry. Questions? Are any of you coming to my second session today on how to hire a winner, sales management, how to hire a winner? All right, a couple of people. I'll look forward to seeing you all later on. Beyond that, I want to thank you for coming and listening. Thank you very much.